The Rambam, known as the Guide to the Perplexed, not only the title of his sefer, of his book, but that's what he was, the guide to the perplexed. And not only for his generation, but even for our generation, Rambam can be a guide to the perplexed. Now, back in those days, people were very philosophical, and they had philosophical issues, competing philosophies and so on. Today we're not so philosophical. So it would seem that many of Rambam's philosophical arguments would not really be convincing or satisfying to today's mind, where we're a little more pragmatic. But if we look a little deeper, since the Rambam's writings are Torah, and Torah is eternal, so if we get past the outer form of the philosophical argument, we get to emes, we get to the truth, which is always relevant. For example, in the laws of Avodah Zarah, of idolatry, Rambam gives a whole description of the development, seemingly a historical account of the development of idolatry. And he says, in a nutshell, he says that Avraham rediscovered God. What happened? Adam spoke to God. Noach spoke to God. There was no believing in God. But then people came along and reasoned sincerely that since the sun, the moon, the forces of nature are God's generals or ministers because they control so much of life on earth, it only stands to reason that the king would want his ministers honored and respected. And so God probably would appreciate if we showed some appreciation and some respect to his generals. And so they worshipped, in whatever form, the sun, the moon, fertility, all the gods that were idols in that time. We could give them the benefit of the doubt that they were sincere in that assumption. But it went down from there. A generation or two later, false prophets actually came and said that God actually demanded that we honor his generals, and which generals to honor, and so on. That deteriorated even further in a couple of generations later, where the false prophets actually claimed that the ministers, the sun and the moon, demanded to be worshipped, and threatened dire consequences if they weren't. And so powerful was their influence that God himself was, for all practical purposes, forgotten. Not that they didn't believe in God. There was never a time when idolaters did not believe in God. But they believed that God was removed, irrelevant to their lives, because earth was directed and controlled by the idols which God appointed and gave them the authority and the right to run the world. And so if you need something, there's no point in going to God. If you need something, you go to the idol. So here's what happens. People started talking about which idols they believed in. And of course, they believed in the idol because no one ever spoke to an idol, and an idol never really spoke to anyone. So all you could do is believe that that's true. So now, a person who, like Avraham, recognized God, meets a guy who worships idols, and the idolater says, I worship the moon. I believe in the moon. And Avraham says, no, there's one God. And the idolater says, oh, so that's what you believe. And Avraham says, no, I don't believe it. There is one God who spoke to Noach, who spoke to Adam. and who eventually spoke to Avraham. So the relationship with God was never a belief relationship. It was an experience. But you couldn't get past that language anymore. And we suffer from it today too. Oh, you believe in God, I believe in evolution. I don't believe in God. God is the experience that we've had for 5,000 and some years. But that's the way the language has gotten locked in. So really, what happened was people knew God and started to believe in idols. What does it mean that Avraham recognized God? Avraham realized that God had not abandoned the earth, and that when you need something, you can talk to him. You don't need an intermediary. You don't need ministers. You can go to God directly. Why does Rambam give us this whole historical background when his purpose is to give you the rules, the do's and the don'ts of idolatry? So the Rebbe explained, Rambam is not giving you historical background. He's telling you what the halachic requirement is. What does it mean not to believe in an idol? Not to believe in an idol doesn't mean I don't believe in idols because I'm not interested. You haven't fulfilled the mitzvah of thou shalt have no other gods. Too lazy to believe in something does not fulfill the mitzvah. In order to fulfill the commandment, thou shalt have no other gods, you have to convince yourself logically and demonstrate how it cannot logically be that there would be an idol, that the idol has independent will, that the idol can make decisions, and that God had abandoned the world to these idols. Like Avraham, who explained it, who understood it, not believed it. So there are matters of faith and belief, what we're allowed to believe, not allowed to believe. But then there are the mitzvah, the actual performance of a mitzvah, and the performance of the mitzvah of thou shalt have no other gods is only fulfilled when you have demonstrated to your own satisfaction and intelligent conviction that it cannot be. Obviously, the mitzvah to believe in God is not fulfilled until you have satisfied yourself intelligently that yes, God must be, and it makes perfect sense, it is necessary, it is convincing, and then you have actually brought God into your world, into your life, into your mind. Now you fulfill the mitzvah. So studying Rambam, even today, is relevant, is effective, can solve many problems, because he's a guide to the perplexed. And we may not be philosophical, but we're definitely perplexed. So we have a set of tapes on Rambam called Guide to the Perplexed. You might be interested.